Pixar Studio is one of the most unique animation studios. In a short period of time, they became one of the most successful film studios in the world, had released a huge number of well-known cartoons, they've earned an impeccable name and love from the viewers around the world, winner of Oscars and other awards. Since then, they continue breaking records with the quality of their cartoons. In addition, Pixar has made a huge contribution and influence on development of computer graphics. The uniqueness of Pixar lies in their folding ability to combine high artistic and technical competence of cartoon creation. Pixar produces cartoons with the technology of three-dimensional models. In 1995, Pixar released the world's first full-length film performed on a computer, Toy Story. For a start, it's worth going back to 1995 and see what cartoons were released at that time.
Talk you out of it? Oh, damn! Marketplace for me. Why, I even have servants to go to the market.
As you can see, most of the stories revolve around princes, knights, or animals, heroic deeds, love and kindness and care. Toy Story is one of those cartoons that completely revolutionized the animation industry. Another example of such revolution is Shrek cartoon. Here, the story revolves around revitalization of children's toys, their adventures and crises. The only story that comes to my mind is a 2D animation about the revival of an intimate object. It's The Nutcracker and the Mouse King, written by Hoffman's short story in 1816, an animated film in 1973 directed by Boris Stepansev. At the end of the 20th century, due to the fact that all cartoons were drawn by hand, the main feature of the animator's work were bright characters and their movements. But there were problems with the frame formation. After all, it was difficult to express crazy ideas of the virtual camera and show interesting setups from the point of view of viewers, as well as combine drawn background with a frame-by-frame drawn character in a celluloid sheet. And it was computer animation that made it possible to introduce cinematography into cartoons. In order to create drawings in traditional animation, it is already enough to take paper and pencil. All the information about the drawings is perceived and visualized on paper by a person. That's why drawn animation can be produced at a minimal cost. 3D animation, in turn, at least, requires a computer. The reason is that information is perceived and visualized by a machine and the program. The computer contains information about the 3D model, its color, and how it should react with surrounding space. Should it light? Should it reflect the objects around it? And so on. This information is written in the computer by a program code that is written by a program itself, but in order for the program to write it down, the programmers had to do it when creating a program. But let's discuss this information a little bit later. When Ed Catmull created the first 3D animation in a computer, it was a model by hand, but in order to calculate data about its shape, Ed created a plaster model of his own hand that was then divided into small consecutive shapes, called polygons. He set up dimensions, value, inside a computer. Since that time, it is used by 3D modelers to model objects using measuring system from the outside world. To use metrics from a real measurable data. For example, if they create a person or a tree or a mug, they will write his height using centimeters or feet or inches, kilometers and miles, etc. However, Pixar is unique in that throughout its existence has been developing computer software programs to work in, as well as in techniques for visualizing and simulating 3D models, to improve animation for this program. This led the company to improve their cartoons and stay ahead of many computer graphics companies. After all, if they depended on the technical limitations of the computer and programs of the time, then they invented and found ways to solve their problems. One of these programs is called Presto, formerly Marionette. A program directly for animation. There is practically no data about it on the internet because it's not available to any user. Pixar wants to focus on creating cartoons and improving animation graphics, as well as the earnings come from the showing of cartoons in cinema theaters, from sales for TV streaming services, merchandise. If the program were released for the general use, then it would be necessary to create a technical department that would solve users' programs that animators might have, adapt the program for the new laptops and computers every time, and to deal with such problems, Pixar is not ready yet. They are busy with developing new technologies for animation. The second program, by the way, available for general use, is called RenderMan. It's high-performance based and unbased photorealistic render of materials in the scene. RenderMan is used in many film companies for their graphics. The program's ultimate animators would love more is called Use the Architecture that allows animators to work on the same scene or same character at the same time, exactly like a construction, where each person works on a certain detail as a result of a teamwork as a building. We're gonna discuss this program a little bit later. Because all these programs wasn't created at the same time, it took time to find flows and advantages of computer animation. Let's go back to the beginning of Pixar. The first work, even before the studio was officially founded, was a short animated film, The Adventures of Ellie and Wally B, 1984. It was the crawling glory of Pixar founders, Edwin Catmull and Elvira Smith. At university, they got obsessed with the idea of creating film on a computer, and for more than 10 years they went for the goal, creating from scratch everything they needed for this. Namely, Adventures of Andrew and Wally B pushed the world towards CGI, and its animation work for the first time used high-quality blurring of fast movements in a computer graphics. Same like it was done in a classic stop-motion animation, the movements of the characters looked natural and smooth, and motion blur has become the standard for computer animation. The second short film Pixar, Luxor Jr., 1999. 2 Minutes 30 was the first work of John Lasseter and a revolutionary project that showed the possibilities of programming light and shadow, as well as the variety of textures, where the creators wanted to show the uniqueness of computer graphics and surprise the audience of those years. With the smooth and light movements of two ordinary splash lamps that, thanks to the versatility of animation, added characters and a dialogue without words. From that point on, Luxor Jr. became a symbol of Pixar and regularly appears on a studio's splash screen. In 1986, Luxor Jr. became the first computer animation to receive an Oscar nomination. In 2014, the American Library of Congress decided that the short had cultural, historical, and aesthetic value. As a result, it was listed in the U.S. National Film Register. Before Pixar switched to full-length animation, the studio created short films to perfect their technologies and show the studio's visualization capabilities. In a cartoon, Girls Game, their new technology of subsurface scattering was involved, where the light gets an opportunity to pass through semi-transparent surfaces and gradually scatter inside them, which is especially characteristic for the interaction of human skin and light. Since the light is not completely reflected from the skin, and some light penetrates under the skin is scattered. Until 1998, Pixar made a great discovery revealed the effect of uncanny valley. The hypothesis, first formulated by Japanese robotic scientist and engineer Masahiro Mori, it implies that a robot or a 3D model that looks or acts approximately like a human, but not exactly like the real one, causes dislike and disgust in a human minds. It is related with the human evolutions where the fox succumbed to a sense of instinct and avoided people with strange behaviors, so as not to put themselves and their tribe in a danger of catching some kind of disease. That's why the character must be either far away from realism, cutely animated in unrealistic proportions, or having high quality photorealism so that the viewers would not be able to recognize if that's an actor or a 3D model. In addition, short films are often experimented with narrative techniques. That's why Pixar has several curious short films that combine 2D and 3D graphics, like Day and Night, combination of two types of animation, but are also worth noting devoid of any dialogues, and the cartoons is behaved purely visually. Visual narrative that have no dialogue share with us the stories on the age of combination of 2D and 3D animation. Step by step was becoming a picture with a good idea for creating something more than shorts. First full-length work of the studio Toy Story is a striking example of restrictions that Pixar professionally was passing through, despite the fact that the cartoon looks extremely impressive, especially for that time, since for the first time it could give viewers all the delights of graphics. Today it looks quite limited in cardboard, but it's worth looking closer. And we'll see how Pixar tried in every possible way to bypass the restrictions. The fact that the main characters are toys is justified by the fact that it's much easier to create and animate them than the human beings or animals. Since smooth skin and angular movements, as well as the facial expressions, don't look so strange, which cannot be said about people, they try to show people in a cartoon to a minimum, limiting themselves only to showing their legs in a scene or their back, close-ups of the characters. In addition, at the same time the technology of animation of the hair was not invented, and Pixar came up to the decision to adorn the characters with either short haircuts or hats, and women's hair are collected in neat hairstyles. By the way, for as long as our characters are small toys, so they see people exactly like Pixar showed us, too big to see them all at the same time. So part of legs or hands doesn't make this cartoon bad, instead they make it detailed. Each film Pixar set a challenge for themselves. They were solving tasks that previous movies caused us. So in a subsequent cartoon, A Bug's Life, Pixar solved the problem of animating many similar models in a frame by developing a technology called simulation that allowed not only to group many identical characters into groups and animate each group separately, but also to a computer program to simulate unique body movements for each character in the group, based on a handmade rigged model and a certain points of animation, and all this to create a realistic and better quality picture. Crowd simulation technology has allowed Pixar to develop one of the most complex monsters corporation since ever. Seen with the numerous factory doors, the creators of computer animation at that time could not implement all the ideas of the screenwriters due to the imperfect computer abilities. So, for example, in this picture could be only two characters completely covered with hair and wool, Sally and Boo. That's why Mike has no hair. The fact is, Pixar technologists and scientists had just learned how to simulate the behavior of wool, and then computers walked to the limits, calculating behavior of each of the 2.3 million hairs on Sally's body and the shadows they cast. Still, somehow it was possible to do with 2 characters. 3 is overkill, but the result was excellent for the early 2000s. Animating the fabric of Mari's t-shirt was also a big challenge. The characters in the movie don't just wear clothes. If all of them, like a girl, dressed in a cloth, the computer would not withstand such a load. Although the corporation coded on 3,500 sound processes. For comparison, Toy Story is designed for only 200 processes. But the main problem with cloth simulation is collision. Collision with other objects. Since the cloth has complex behavior, it's not uncommon when it comes into contact with other models. It can pass through them, or more often, through itself. To prevent this, in addition to the physical simulation, the fabric uses a collision avoidance system. It's a safety system designed to prevent a collision by detecting an alert and animator, as well as it prevents the effect of a core collision, and the fabric correctly responds to the force acting in it. Let's say his cloth. Surprisingly, for an outside observer who's not versed in the technical intricacies of computer animation, the scenes with sun in Himalayan snow turned out to be the most technically difficult. Just think, millions of hair interact with millions of snowflakes. Interestingly, from a screenwriting point of view, this was also the most difficult moment, since in Himalayas, Sally and Mike's relationship reached the boiling point. The filmmakers wrote the quarrel of characters dozens of times, until they came up with an option that was performed in a final picture. In order to understand the whole volume, it took about 11 to 12 hours to render one frame of the Monsters Corporation, with the main characters poor, and already at the Monsters University, the resource-intensive global illumination was added to improve fur. For viewers who are not involved in video filmmaking or animation, it's worth clarifying that 24 frames are most often used in 1 second of films. So calculate how much time it took to render 1 second of the animation and the whole scene. The subsequent cartoon The Incredibles took up the development of technology of realistic behavior of human muscles, as well as the technology that allows stretching a 3D elastic model without breaking a rigged model. It's noteworthy that all the characters in The Incredibles were created from the same human model that was then modified in order to give each character a unique look. And most often, external characters look somewhat exaggerated and simple, while we can see their forms. But again, Pixar is trying to devote more time to the animation of eyes, because most of the viewer's attention is going to follow and analyze reflections and emotions, because eyes reflect what's happening and what the character feels. Elastic's character changed her body's shape many times. In one episode, she literally becomes a bolt. Well, for sure, it wasn't possible to automate this process, each time manually breaking the rig. And it would be unbearable to animate everything piece by piece. But in addition to the breakthrough in Elastic's transformation, the Pixar team came up with a completely new approach to animating people. It is widely believed that computer graphics are not capable of generating subtle human movements. For example, it was considered impossible to revitalize muscles that will flex and pulsate, hair that will flip and bounce, and skin that will wrinkle and stretch. Animators have long avoided humanoid characters. However, the Incredibles authors had a huge desire to be able to show a realistic movements of the characters, because the way they look and move is gonna add them proper character. Programmers and sculptors took to medical textbooks to create a new good technology that allows the skin to respond precisely to how the muscles stick to it and slide over it. You can see it in the Mr. Incredible's muscles. Having created a realistic animation, the team has developed a technology that preserves textures and lighting details of the suits during the most extreme movements in the renderment software. Most incredible in this technology is that even when the clothes were stretched to the limit or compressed, it was still having high utilization after render. In Brave, the team helped to solve the cartoon's main technical problem, animation of Meredith's hair that symbolizes her freedom. To show the chaotic movement of unruly hair, simulation was used. Pixar team discovered that curly hair forms remount springs and changes shape when pulled. And the logic of the program is just a lot of spirals that gravity and wind react to. The problem was that hard curves always kept their shape and almost didn't stretch. The weakened curves is to solve. Yeah, same like in real life. The team had to come up with something new that would let Meredith's hair hold its shape, but at the same time also be movable and stretchy. The developers came up with the idea to add a curve fragment, creating rods inside the curls. That's how the algorithm of simulating springs were created that allowed the curves to be bouncy. So it turned out to achieve natural shape holding curls. Congratulations again, Pixar team, you're making a great job. Also worth noting is the particle system, which is responsible for simulating many small objects, like down to every grain of dust, flying fiber, and so on, and even aerodynamic performance. All these simulation systems is the main feature of computer graphics, and there are really so many of them that for almost every single case, like creating rain or clouds, a number of different technologies are used. With their help, we can create incredibly realistic behavior of almost everything in a frame, but no one forbids breaking down the law of physics, of course, because they do that a lot with more of the behavior of objects. Even physically impossible actions might look more natural for viewers than the first animation of beginner in the 3D program. In Lucas' cartoon, there was a target to create a realistic ocean, but in a style of cartoons. The thing is that for environmental specialists, this has become a professional challenge. Their software is designed to refine and create a real realistic environment, like photo or video realistic. So, if you're this level of detail, then it will no longer look like water, but realistic water and animated characters would not look together and break down the picture. To solve the problem, the developers have created a special sliders that allow you to control the size, shape and speed of the waves. They also worked on splash lights, making them more cartoonish, less distorting details, and particles flying in all directions. This development made it possible to make the water believable but artistic. You can complicate your life and simulating process if in this scene, hair and fabrics can get wet. Okay, it's clear that fabrics and hair changing its color, reflection and began to stick to the body. They became heavier, whatever flows from them, and reacts completely different with the physical forces that act the head during the animation process. That's really hard to make a simulation in a scene with water, or simulation of liquids, when it's necessary to make the interaction with something. Although the physics of water itself is successfully modeled in real life, the implementation of the behavior of light in the water is extremely complex. All these simulations take a lot of power of the computer, and even most of modern computers are not ready for this. For example, Finding Nemo. Due to the imitation of underwater lighting, it could take up to 4 days to render only one frame, just because there was water and underwater light sources in each scene. Pixar is a unique studio that keeps talking to kids and important things in life, and even touching on taboo topics in children's films, like death. Their stories not only show broad and colorful characters experience hysterical adventures and an amazing world different from ours, but also tells us about life and growing up, good and bad experience of adults, attempts to cope with the emotions, ability to listen to the desires and follow yourself, pain of loss, perseverance, friendship, despite the rules accepted in the society, the closeness of characters, and the existential crisis. After all this information, it's no surprise that Pixar has made its name in the industry and keep getting more fans every year. Do you agree? And this is just the tip of the iceberg in their story.